Hey, what's up, everybody? We have a new YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe right now. Leave a comment on the video. Share it with your friends. It's also a podcast, 3 and Out, wherever you listen with me, John Middlekauff, Apple, Spotify. We have you covered, as well as thevolume.com. We have merch. Check out. I got 3 and Out hats right now. Thevolume.com. Search the podcast. Buy some merch. Okay, let's do the Middlekauff mailbag. At John Middlekauff is the Instagram. Fire in those direct messages. For the mailbag, thought on this list, a lot of people don't give credit where credit is due. So this list is 2024 head coaching higher grades. Harbaugh, A, agreed. Dave Canales, B+. Raheem, B. McDonald, B. Antonio Pierce, B-. Callahan, B-. Mayo, C+, Dan Quinn, D+. This is of CBS Sports. How could Canales be a B+? How's that possible? He's a lifetime position coach. That Pete Carroll never wouldn't make him a coordinator. And then he did have a really good year, 1 year, and you're giving him a B+? I would just give like a passing grade, but how could you even give, you couldn't give a fail, but you couldn't give a A or B. All the shit, who gives, I just don't care. I think that's why I like the podcast space. I don't have to do any of this stuff. Like, I don't know. I mean, I like Mike McDonald a lot. He was arguably the best coordinator in the league who wasn't a head coach. Is he going to be a head coach? I got no freaking clue. He could be the next Pete Carroll or it could be the next Matt Patricia. Dan Quinn's better than a D+. How could you have a guy who's been to a Super Bowl way below all these other guys? Raheem Morris, listen, he was a good hire. Like, everyone really likes him. Guy was running out of Tampa because he was partying with the players. Now, he was young. I think these exercises are so fucking dumb. At least with a player. I'm just trying to pick. Like, if the Chargers signed Saquon Barkley, you'd be like, God, probably going to make a lot of sense. Harbaugh likes to run the ball. He's a good fit. He's going to know him from the Big Ten. Like, I like that signing. Like, it's easy when a guy signs to know, like, I like that sign. It doesn't mean it's going to work out, but you have no clue with a coach. None. Mike Shanahan and won multiple Super Bowls, went to Washington. It was a disaster. I thought John Gruden was going to be pretty good. It was also not great. So these head coaching hires. Remember Doug Peterson was the worst head coaching hire ever. Beat Belichick in the Super Bowl. This is so stupid. These guys, I don't play in that kind of world. So it's hard for me even to like have a comment. I just don't care. Like, I think they're irrelevant. They just don't mean anything. This is from Brett. When you describe Andy Reid's work ethic, can you give us examples? I'm always curious about the habits that set greatness apart. One big advantage I think there is for certain people, I definitely don't fall into this category, is when you don't need a lot of sleep. Right? Like Tiger Woods and Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan were notorious for not needing a lot of sleep and still having energy and having your brain pistons firing on all cylinders. Coach Reid, I feel like, could work on football for 18 plus hours a day. He just didn't need that much sleep. So he was just constantly, and this is why I always say, when you do what you like to do, it is so much easier to work longer. And the people that like what they like to do are just going to work longer on their craft than someone that doesn't. Just basic, like the way we're wired. So you get these football coaches who are addicted to football, and obviously Andy's more talented than most guys. Then he doesn't need much sleep. So he's not sleeping that much, and he's just constantly working on football. He's not like dicking around in the office during the game week, right? He's just constantly watching film, and they just, I don't even know how much to describe it beside that. It's like I sat next to him when he was doing this. I just know he was awake a lot. I never went to the office during the season when he wasn't there. It's impossible to beat him in the office. Doesn't happen. I've actually heard Spagnola's a lot like that. Right? One thing I heard about Gruden is like Gruden did do the, super early, whatever it was, 4:30, but he was also pooped out by like 7 o'clock at night. I've always heard this about Belichick. Like they're end up pooping out at 7 o'clock at night. And I can't, if I'm getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning, like I'm not going to have a lot of energy by the time we get to 8, 9 o'clock. Some guys do. But by the end of Saban, like he was like a 7 to 9 guy. The Belichick, the Andy Reid, and listen, a lot of younger coaches are like this too, but it's their competitive stamina is elite. Their competitive stamina. And in football, that means constantly watching football. But not just watching it, like being able to understand what you're watching. So if you are super tired and not a guy that can't function on no sleep, it's kind of a waste of time. So to me, it's a huge advantage for him. He just needs less sleep. That's the thing about football. It's like if you're a coach, you're not digging ditches or whatever. You're just kind of sitting there with a clicker in your hand the majority of the season, evaluating your team, evaluating the other team in a dark room at 6 in the morning or 8 o'clock at night. So when I talk about that, like work ethic, it just means the ability to watch tape nonstop. Is there precedent for teams front loading contracts? Often they push cap hits down the road, but what about the opposite? Joe Burrow's new contract doesn't really affect the cap until after 25. If the Bengals wanted to re-sign Higgins and have money available for Chase in future years, could they give Higgins a front-loaded contract? Not sure how this would work. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's happened. I think a lot of teams really value flexibility. So when you front load a contract, like let's say you put like $30 million on the books this upcoming year to give the majority of the contract, I think it limits your ability to be flexible as things arise. And that's why teams always like the backloaded flexibility. Because I can always keep kicking the can down the road. And you can't do that when you front load. So technically you 100% could. Right? Like the Houston Texans could sign someone, they got $80+ million in cap space. If they wanted to sign T. Higgins, if he hit the market, you could give him $40 million this next year, right? And shorten the contract. I don't know. I'm just trying to talk it out loud. I don't know why teams don't do that. Be at the combine, maybe we'll talk to a GM and ask him. That's a good question. Sort of a anecdote followed by a question. I went to high school in Southern California, played football for D1 Southern Section football. We played Oaks Christian my junior year. They had Michael Pittman, Matt Corral, Colby Parkinson. Pittman had 500 total yards and 5 touchdowns. Somehow, my school won the game. I don't think that was all in one game. Or was it? I don't know. Maybe it was all in one game. If that's true, that's insane. The next year, we played Modern Day, and they had St. Brown go for 200+ yards and a couple scores. We lost by 40. What wide receiver body type archetype is your favorite to watch play? If there was a soul wondering, I had one catch for 29 yards in my varsity career. It's funny when people say, I always find this like with people dating. Like I have a type. I've never understood that. I have a type. Like I just kind of like I would be open to date anybody who I thought was attractive. Whether she's, got brown hair, blonde hair, tall, short. I've never been one to have a type. I've never quite understood that. Honestly, I never have. Like I'd be open-minded to anything. I've dated people that look completely different than the other. And like no different with players. Like I love watching Deebo Samuel play. Just like I love watching Devontae Adams play. They couldn't be any more opposite. I just like good players. I don't necessarily have, I would say, a favorite. I guess I would be more inclined to watch more physical players. That's a huge element of the sport, which I enjoy, is the physical element, right? Jamar Chase, Deebo Samuel, DK, can TO forever, break tackles, run through guys, make shit happen after the catch. But I'm also a sucker for just an incredible route runner, right? Like I loved Marvin Harris. I like Brandon Ayuk a lot. Why Devontae Adams became such a great player. Now he's kind of a combination because he's strong too. But like when you can just get open at ease against anybody. And then it's like, what the fuck's Tyreek Hill? Never seen anything like that. He's a great route runner, and he's got incredible speed, and he's strong. So, like I said, I'm open to whatever. Honestly, don't really have a favorite. Get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers who deposit $5 or more can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 back in a bonus bet. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN. New customers can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 if your first bet loses. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours. Currently listening to the February 14th broadcast. Romo did basically know what was up. The Chiefs didn't call a timeout toward the end of overtime 1 because they were going to let it run to the second overtime. The 3 timeouts were for the entirety of the next 4 overtime periods. I know Romo probably didn't know all the details, but he got it pretty much correct. There aren't 4 quarters left. You're not going to have a scoreless game for 4 more quarters. It's a drive-by-drive game. Even on that first drive for the 49ers, like getting a score is pretty essential. So using the timeouts, everyone acknowledges Romo didn't really know the rules. Most people didn't. Let's be real. But to keep the timeouts for the second quarter, what are we talking? You can use a timeout in the playoff overtime, to me, strategically, whenever you want. You don't look at it like a game, right? You don't want to use a timeout in the third quarter of a regular game because you might need them in the fourth quarter, especially toward the end of the game. To me, in that playoff overtime, you are allowed to use a timeout whenever you want. Whenever you have 3 of them. It'd be one thing if you only have 1, you have 3 timeouts. 3. For a game that honestly probably is just going to be a couple possessions. Total. Not even just 2 possessions for you, like total. So if you want to use a timeout, use the freaking timeout. The NFL season coming to an end, and with the disinterest we both share in the NBA, you know what's crazy is the majority of my life, I watched the dunk contest and the 3-point contest. I saw it a couple times last night in the guide. I went right by it. I have no clue who was even in the dunk contest. And because I know that more than likely nobody I've ever heard of. Talk about an event that used to be incredible that's now you can't pay a guy like me who's grown up on it to even click on it. Pretty crazy. I certainly hope you cover baseball because there are a few podcasts that do. That's not happening either. And that has to do more. It's not a podcast sport. It really, I like baseball. I covered a lot like the NBA probably though. I follow the NBA. Like I know what's going on. Just like I'll follow baseball. I'm not watching the games during the regular season. Tell me when the playoffs come, then I'll pay attention. But we're not talking baseball on this podcast. And I'm fascinated by the Dodgers, the Yankees. Like I love the business behind it, but like it's just not going to get covered here. And again, I don't cover sports, or cover anything. I just talk about what I want to talk about. And baseball is just not something that I'm going to spend much time on. Beside, like, if someone hit 90 home runs, something historic happens. Obviously, we might mention it, but with Manfred declaring his absence at the end of the 29 season, what major changes? I honestly don't care. I said this forever when everyone pushed back against the runner at second in extra innings. And people were like, this is not fundamental part of the game. Like, who gives a shit? No one wants to watch an 18-inning game. Not a soul. I've seen the parks, at 12 o'clock at night. It's 90 people are there. So it's like, I think they made some of those smart moves, speed up the game, try to get more action, ban the shift. It's a lot of baseball talk. Again, I'm pro baseball. I enjoy the sport. I have been a Colts fan since I was 7, which was way before Peyton Manning. I was very disappointed by the selection of Richardson because I have never seen a quarterback play 13 college games, be inaccurate, be a runner, and do well in the NFL. But here's my question. Why do so many assume that just because a quarterback is drafted high, he is a franchise quarterback? We take those guys like Richardson, Fields, and Darnold and anoint them franchise quarterbacks just because of the drafted position. I did a check one time looking at quarterbacks drafted in the first 2 rounds since 2010, and I believe came up with less than 20% end up being average. But everything I read is Richardson, it showed great promise, or he was the best player on the field. But then why don't they produce? I would think it should be the other way around. Don't expect much to be shocked if they become good. Again, no running quarterback has ever won a Super Bowl. Well, Steve Young did, but he was a passer by then. Quarterbacks don't usually get more accurate in the NFL. Josh Allen did. I hear what you're saying. I mean, what are they supposed to say? This guy sucks. He's never going to be anything. I like, what's the take supposed to be on Anthony Richardson? We'll see, which I guess a lot of people have, but that would be my take. We'll see. He definitely physically is a freak show, but he played in 4 or 5 games and ended up with a sling. So it's a lot of unknown. To me, the cool thing, though, about the Richardson situation is how good your coach is. Like, your coach has proven he can win with randoms. So if they can just get, I think that's a huge factor. Can he stay on the field, though? I mean, some of his injuries were like innocuous hits. The concussion, he barely got touched. The shoulder injury, it wasn't even a violent tackle. That's what would concern me before we even get into the playing. We have no clue. Can you play 17 straight games? Let's do that first. If Anthony Richardson had played this whole season, are they in the playoffs? Probably not, because of the ups and downs that he would have had. He was such a raw product. Like, Minshew is a better player right now, obviously. But for you guys to be a consistent winning franchise, like, he's got to be good. We're just solid. Like, you don't need him to be Josh Allen. Can he just be like a top 12 player? Like you said, running is not really what you do in the playoffs. Got to pass. Got to pass to win. So I hear what you're saying. I think anyone smart would just have a we'll see. I don't think. Look at what he did and however many snaps he played, which wasn't much. I don't feel great one way or the other. I wouldn't say, like, I'm betting against him, and I wouldn't fucking throw my mortgage on the guy. I would say he's just an unknown with a lot more questions than answers for sure. So if anything, you would probably lean negative, because historically would show you a lot more questions than answers when you're an NFL player usually don't turn out to be stud players. And the number one thing you have to be able to do is get on the field. If you're not on the field, you're useless. Just a reality of the game. If you're injured all the time, you're useless. I mean, that's the bottom line of the industry. You got to be able to stay on the field. And then from there, obviously improve. But usually talented guys, coachable guys, the guys that love football, if they're on the field a lot, will improve, especially when you have the physical gifts. But to me, the biggest question with them is, like, how many games has he played over the last, 3 years? Total of 15 games, 18 games. The NFL season's 17 now. How many games the Colts play this year? They played 17 and they make the playoffs? No, they lost in week 18. They played 17 games. I mean, has the guy played 17 games since 2020? So I hear you.